Hey, friends, welcome back to the Faith Driven Leader podcast. I'm your host, Ann Eileen Thompson. Today, we are diving into a conversation that's going to really challenge the way you think about your health, the way you think about leadership, and what it means to steward your body with purpose. I'm joined today by Dr. Dave DeMarco. He's a family physician, but he's also a lifestyle medicine expert. We're going to talk about what that means. He's the founder of DexaFit Cincinnati, which you're going to learn all about. And he recently made a pretty bold move to leave the world of traditional medicine and fully step into a vision that God's been stirring in him, frankly, for years, helping people live longer, healthier lives through kind of a whole person approach to care. In this episode, we're going to talk about what does it mean to lead with what Dave calls beauty and goodness in a medical field, which is often marked by burnout and hurry and impatience almost, I think sometimes. We're going to talk about why faith isn't separate from medicine and how restoration is really at the heart of both. And Dave's going to share kind of the real story about his decision to leave the safety of a system and build something entirely new. If you've been sensing a nudge to step into something new, or if you're curious about how your health journey connects to your faith, I think you're going to love this conversation. Let's dive in. Okay, Dr. Dave, Dr. DeMarco, Dave, have you ever had one? You have to have a doctor, Dr. DeMarco, and you probably wonder, do I call him doctor or do I call him by his first name?
Yeah.
Dr.
So
Dave. I think I'm going to settle on Dr. Dave.
that is perfectly fine. I have people call me Dr. Dave, Dr. D,
Perfect.
Dr. DeMarco. They usually do use the doctor, which is nice, but I
Yeah,
know
it's
that
a
it's
form
not
of
necessary.
respect.
Some patients just call me Dave, and I know that that makes them feel more comfortable. So if that makes
Yeah,
them comfortable, that's you'll get as I get into my story. It's all about taking care of the whole person. And
yeah,
if they're feeling more comfortable by trying to kind of not feel intimidated by something and
yeah.
say, just use whatever language you feel comfortable with, because
All
that
right. Well,
ultimately is going to bring healing, and
yeah, that's
stress
right.
doesn't bring healing. So if it stresses you out to be in the room with a doctor, just call me whatever you want to call me.
Well, I'm going to go with Dr. Dave. Well, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So I always start off every podcast conversation by asking our guests to tell us what is your definition of leadership and how does it connect to your faith?
Yeah. So I learned leadership through my upbringing in the church, so to speak. Watching my parents volunteer, it never made a lot of sense to me why they'd spend so many hours at a church, but they did, and they seemed to love it. And that was my first taste of what leadership looks like. I think leadership is doing the work, really, just being
Mm,
willing to act and go and be an ambassador or a representation of God, of
yeah,
Jesus, of the
yeah,
church. And so when I think about leadership, I first think of Jesus as a person. I think of him being described as the suffering servant. So, first of all,
mm,
he's serving others with that. And there's moments of suffering. Now, his suffering's greater than I hope I ever experience.
right.
But there's a willingness to get dirty and to be uncomfortable.
Yeah,
And I think that's an element of it. I think Paul even says in his um, kind of his letters how he beats his body, and he runs in such a way to win the race. And
yeah,
that means he's working hard and he's disciplined and he's he's at it, right?
yeah,
And so that's Paul. And then I think about, I have a lot of influence in my the last 25 years, a wonderful church here in Cincinnati, Ohio, Crossroads Church, which Brian Tome, people love him and say all kinds of things about him. And but at the same time,
yeah,
he's an effective leader. And one of the, he has these five marks of a man that I've
yeah,
tried to instill into my son as well, which most of which are about being, someone who shows up, being someone who's
yeah.
willing to do the work. And so all the different influences from my parents all the way through to my local church now help define my idea of what it means to lead. And then that feeds into my practice and how I practice medicine. So
I love that because I think so often we talk about leadership as this kind of guiding and vision casting, but execution, doing the work is a part of being a great leader. And I've known plenty of leaders who are great at the vision, but they're not very good at the execution.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
can really fall short. You can really kind of leave people in a bit of a, kind of wanting for something more. They buy into the vision, but it's not happening yet. So I'm guessing
yeah.
we'll come back around to this when we start talking about your new venture. But I'd love to just connect one more dot. So I mentioned to you earlier, we've not had a doctor on the show before,
Hmm.
and I'm curious how your faith integrates with how you practice medicine, like on the day to day.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I don't know exactly where I got this idea. I think it was in college. I think I was a Miami of Ohio undergrad.
Okay.
And I think it was somebody who was helping coach me and lead me that kind of introduced me to this idea that God is in the restoration business. And
Mm,
I'm kind of coming along to do things within my father's business. I'm in my father's work of restoring things. And so, what
wow.
did that look like when I was younger? Well, I mean, I remember my wife and I bought our first house in Pleasant Ridge, in Cincinnati, and it needed some work because it was a 1927 house. And we saw it as an opportunity to restore. Very
Yeah.
practical, right? But
Right.
we just wanted to make that house better than when we started. We bought
Yeah.
it one way, it should be better when we left. And I've kind of taken that through all areas of my life. Like, how do I build a better fill in the blank, right? Whether it's build a
Yeah.
better house, build a better relationship, and then ultimately, how do you help patients be better than they were when they met you? Like, can
Yeah.
I restore elements of who they are, their whole person? And that's something that I think my faith informed me and made me want to go into medicine, which is, boy, this is a field where you get to help the whole person, right? You get
Yeah.
to help their body, their mind, their spirit, and that holistic view ties so well to my faith, but it
Yeah.
really is what the individual needs. And so you'll hear as we talk today, kind of that three-pronged approach where I feel like when I was led into this direction of starting a new venture called DexaFit, and kind of reimagining what primary care might look like. The mantra was part of the three prongs. It was healthy body,
Yeah.
flourishing mind, and a renewed spirit. And
Mm,
that if I could bring those three things to Cincinnati, um, I will have done good work, and
I love
I can
that.
retire someday saying, I'm satisfied. I think I've done
Yeah.
well. And the vision's growing, the vision's getting bigger as to what I'd love to accomplish with that. But
Yeah.
it starts with that, and that would be enough. Even if we could just
Yeah.
help a few people have a healthy body, a flourishing mind, and a renewed spirit. Because out of their spirit, they will create.
Yeah.
And so that's really ultimately the goal is if you bring the best out of an individual, they're living a spirit-led life. And
Yeah.
you could define that very spiritually, like I am informed and fueled by the power of the Spirit of God. Or you could keep that very secular and say, the Wright brothers kind of came upon flight out of their spirit. Like this,
Yeah.
it's like we imitate God. We are,
But we're made in his image.
they made
Yeah.
something out of nothing. They made an airplane
Yeah.
that flew out of nothing, and that's what God did with creation. If we ascribe to that faith, and ultimately, I want to create something that didn't exist before, and
Yeah.
and make it so that it's good and beautiful and true, and ultimately worth admiring and worth being around. And ultimately, I think that's when we're really living out of our own spirits, is when we feel like we're co-creating with God and doing something
Yeah.
new that only maybe we can do because our stories inform us and help us
Yeah.
become who we are today. The good and the bad and the ugly from my past inform me, but that's actually what equips me to be me, which
Yeah.
ultimately, if I'm living that out, man, the sky's the limit of what we can accomplish, I
Yeah.
believe, by faith. Yeah, yeah.
It's so interesting. It's a very seamless thought process of, God is in the restoration business and that's what you're doing in medicine. And it's kind of this whole person
Yeah.
thing and encouraging people to be the best. And medicine is a can be a very I won't use the word secular as if it's a bad word, but it can be a very anti-faith place in some cases, you know? So how have there been what kind of challenges have you faced with kind of practicing that, walking that out day to day, maybe with patients or with coworkers, or
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about some of the challenges and how you've walked through them.
Well, most of the challenges are more around expecting some sort of amazing outcome health wise
Mm,
in 5 minutes. Like,
yeah,
I think anything that's worth doing in life requires kind of a slow, steady obedience in a unified, singular direction, and that doesn't happen in 5 minutes. And so,
right.
you know, we are asked to do a lot in a little bit of time. And you know, I do love some of the specialties that are allowed to, like, I think a vascular surgeon or a neurosurgeon is given the time they need to do their work in the OR, and
Yeah,
nobody questions that. For some reason, we don't give that same time to primary care
yeah,
or to kind of helping the person before they're really sick. I think
yeah,
we really want to change the way we look at that. And so the biggest challenge has been no one stood in my way of doing things the way I wanted to do them. I think doctors are allowed to practice still to this day in much the way they want to. But again, getting back to that idea of leadership at a cost to myself.
yeah.
So most of my hardship has been bringing work home, late nights, weekends
Mm,
of catching up, because I just can't see to do it a different way,
yeah,
because the person in front of me deserves my best. And that means if
yeah,
I'm given 15 minutes, well, I'm not going to document during those 15 minutes. I'm going to spend them with them, and probably 20.
yeah,
And
yeah,
my patients are very gracious. They know, they say, Doc, I know you're running late, but you never rush me. You never make me feel like you're not
yeah,
listening. And so I'll wait for you every time. And they're just gracious that way. They're really
yeah.
kind. But
That's
at the same
awesome.
time, I feel terrible when I'm running more than about 15 or 20 minutes behind schedule. So,
Yeah, I
um,
feel you. There's both
yeah,
sides of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I try
It,
my best there, but really, I think I'd answer that question. If there's ever pushback, it's probably because someone is not leading with beauty and goodness first. And I think
mm,
that when we're trying to deliver a concept like, hey, our faith should inform us of how we help people, and these people deserve more time and more attention than maybe what the schedule allows. Um, my partners, if I'm just leading with beauty and goodness and the virtues that are, you know, worth imitating, right? I think I
yeah.
don't get much pushback. And luckily, doctors do have enough respect still in our
Yeah.
society that I think behind closed doors, who knows what they say about me, but but to my face, I feel like I'm treated with respect and kindness among my peers, even
Yeah.
though, you know, my faith does inform me. So, and
Yeah.
and I try to lead first with doing the work and doing good before I would ever use words that would maybe sound very Christiany or something like
Yeah.
that. It would be, I want to, it's the essence of my faith that matters most. And ultimately, when opportunity rises with the patient and they're willing, I'm more than happy to pray with the patient.
Yeah.
But that would be behind closed doors. It's nothing about show. It's nothing about anything other than how do I meet the need of the person in front of me, whatever that need happens to be. Sometimes it's not an antibiotic they need something different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of what I hear you saying harkens for me kind of operating in the fruits of the spirit.
Yeah,
You know, there's a lot of love
100%.
and joy and peace
Joy,
and
peace,
patience and
patience,
kindness,
kindness,
goodness,
gentleness.
all those
Yeah.
good things. Yeah. And you know, scripture says, against these there is no law. There's no
Yeah.
law against these things. So it's like that really makes a lot of sense to me. And I wonder for so many faith-led professionals working in more secular places, if they took their eyes off of what, you know, the naysayers are saying and instead just walked in those
Yeah.
fruits, how much would the angst kind of just begin to dissipate kind of naturally?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just trying to, and ultimately, I think to be a good leader, I like to think of it this way. I do this with my kids a lot. Is I am the project. Like they are not
Mm,
the project. I am the project. So ultimately, my kids, especially, I mean, it's all baked into them. All my bad stuff, all my good stuff, hopefully too, but all my bad, it's baked in. You start seeing everything from posture to
yeah.
attitude. It's like, well, I wonder where he got that. It's from me.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably
Yeah.
from me.
Yeah.
So, but really, if I am the project, among my colleagues and my peers, if I am the project even in front of my patients, it's a very different place to begin from. And
Yeah.
it allows for a connection and openness and trust. And that
Yeah.
ultimately, if that's there, um, I think everybody's doing all right. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I love that. I'm so grateful to hear that and to hear that that's how you and I've experienced that and seen how you practice that way. And I will tell you a funny story. I had a doctor for several years who was a specialist, and he literally would come in the room and dictate as he was talking to me.
yeah, I've met some
And
of
and
those.
and for years I thought I just don't feel seen.
Yeah.
And making people feel seen is part of, hearing people and being
Yeah.
inviting to people and welcoming people and building that connection with them is so core to our Christian faith. So I love how you express that. That's really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Okay, so let's talk about you are in the midst of a shift. You are in the
Yes.
midst of which probably, I'm guessing, reflects how you've been thinking about medicine and restoration for quite
Yeah.
some time, but you're shifting kind of how you're able to practice it. So let's start first with this shift. I've read a bunch of books, and I remember when I came to see you at DexaFit, I saw a bunch of I can see them right now behind you on the shelf. I'm like, I've read a bunch of those books, but this overall concept of kind of lifestyle medicine, which is
Yeah.
looking at, the whole person, that three-pronged approach that you talked about a little
Yes.
bit earlier. Help us delineate that. Why is it so different
Yeah.
than traditional, I'm using air quotes for those that
Yeah.
aren't watching, traditional medicine?
Yeah, so traditional medicine is great, first of all. I want everyone to hear that loud and clear. I am a product of traditional medicine. I practiced yesterday and will again tomorrow elements of traditional medicine. And
Yep.
when there's an acute illness, we need traditional medicine. When there's an emergency, a trauma, something that is unpredicted, unforeseen, that's where traditional medicine thrives because
Yeah.
traditional medicine is reactive
Yes.
and it is generalized. In other words, it's kind of one size fits all, and it's not really designed to prevent illness. It's not really designed for the individual to be engaged with it. It's more, you sit there and let me do my thing for you. That's really what
Treat you.
traditional
Yeah.
medicine is built for. Yeah.
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 Reactively treat
So
you.
there's this element of lifestyle medicine, which I would define from, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which is growing in influence and popularity among physicians who are getting board certified. I'm one of quite a few here in Cincinnati that are board certified in lifestyle medicine. It talks about the pillars of lifestyle medicine, which are nutrition. We talk about plant predominant whole food as an
Mhm.
approach that makes a lot of sense for aging and aging well, we'll call it, and not developing chronic disease.
Mhm.
Exercise, sleep, stress management, how we connect to other people, and then how we
Yeah.
connect to risky substances, whether they're the taboo ones, the ones that kind of are villainized, like tobacco, the ones that are exonerated, like sugar and caffeine. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different substances that we all probably could say, okay, I'm at least guilty on one or more of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but really, we want to relate well to them. Notice it doesn't mean avoid, it just relate well to all these things. And basically, that's a very active process.
Yeah.
Passiveness is the traditional model.
Mhm.
Active engagement of the individual is really more what it looks like to be
Yeah.
in the lifestyle medicine approach. And so everything we do at DexaFit Cincinnati is going to be proactive, personalized, preventative, with
Yeah.
the goal of helping you live a longer life, but not just to live and be unwell because I know a lot of patients that are aging and they're not aging well,
Yeah.
and they wish they could go back and maybe do a few things differently. And if we could just help people, okay, we can slow down the process of disease and slow down the, I'll just call it aging process, because we all have a sense for what that means when you think of someone who's
Yeah.
just not living a flourishing life. Boy, if we could do lifestyle medicine better at a younger age and engage people more, I think that they would all probably slow that process down.
Yeah.
And for the most part, maybe their health span and their lifespan would be matched. So
Yeah.
living to the ripe old age of 85 is only worth it if you can enjoy the ride
Yeah.
and have some people to enjoy the ride with.
Right.
That's the other problem I'm seeing with some of my older patients that have done the right things is they feel alone, and which is one of
Yeah.
the lifestyle pillars, right? It's connection. And
Connection. Yeah.
I've got some patients that are so healthy and fitness forward that they're now doing cycling and running and triathloning with their children's friends
Wow. That's
because their
awesome.
children's friends in their 30s and 40s are the ones that can kind of relate to where they are. But here they are in their mid early 60s, and they're just like, we this is how we want to live. So my hope is that with what we're doing in positively disrupting some of the traditional medical care, is that we're helping people be more active in the process of owning their own health,
Yeah.
and then also with that reaping the benefits of that. The investment now leads to the dividend or the return later, which is a type of health that many of their peers would not see. And I just hope there's more and more by the time these
Yeah.
current 30 to 50-year-olds are 80, that there's a lot more of this richness and enjoyment of life because of their bodies and their minds being
Yeah.
healthier. And
Yeah.
living out of your spirit is a great way to stay young, by the way. So
Yeah.
people that
And
are engaged in that.
yeah, and it's interesting because I've gone through this debate in my mind a couple of times and had this conversation with people before, but it's not lifestyle medicine and preventative medicine. It's not necessarily about preventing death. I mean, death
No.
comes for all of us. It's more about how do we live fully
Yes.
while we're here, and it's I think it's in Peter Attia's book. He talks about instead of like we get to a certain age and then we start a very slow decline,
Yes.
like let's live as long as we can in a great healthy flourishing place. And yes, we're going to decline, but let's make it nice and fast. And
Yeah.
rather than these slow long, so I mean, I know my mother has been ill for a while, and it's very painful to watch the prolonged suffering and the quality of life that has just deteriorated, as opposed to had she taken a more preventive approach,
Right.
might things have looked different.
Yeah, and the thing is, an older generation, they didn't really have much choice.
They didn't know,
The
right?
environment wasn't kind of designed to help them in that
Yes.
area. And we learn from the past generations. What we know about smoking and the attitude of the young towards smoking now, for the most part, is better than it used to be. And it's because they're riding the coattails of
Yes.
people that have gone before them, some of which had to suffer for them to learn. And so
Yeah.
we will suffer and learn for our children's sake, and it'll go on and on that way. But there is a movement now that is much more towards longevity and making sure that you invest in your health now so that you have the payoff in the later
Yeah.
time. And but the beautiful thing about lifestyle medicine is you get the reward now and later. We
Yeah.
think that we're really missing out on that extra piece of whatever, fill in the blank with your pastry or donut or whatever, or we're missing out on that second beer or that extra glass of wine. But really, it's not about the momentary joy. It's more
Yeah.
about the essence of like, yeah, I'm enjoying the good life. There's one of
Yeah.
the books on my shelf behind me is based off of the Harvard Men's Study, which is the longest running
Yes.
study in American history, at least, and maybe I don't want to be quoted on something. I'm not sure if it's the longest ever run, but it is definitely impactful in lifestyle medicine, because what it shows is, you go back to your wedding vows, in sickness or in health, richness or poverty, I'd add fame or irrelevancy. None of that stuff matters in their study in terms of what defines a good life. What
Okay.
defines a good life is how connected are you to other
Mhm.
people, and how seen do you feel by them, and how do they feel seen by you, and that deep attachment that comes from a long, rich relationship, whether it's a marital relationship, a friend, a family member. These are the rich things that people, as they're aging, they pass that wisdom on to us to say, hey, all that other stuff didn't matter nearly as much as this does. And they were able to see that in this study, that Harvard graduates who went on to do successful things and amazing things compared to inner city Boston boys who were impoverished. It didn't matter whether there was success or failure, or richness or
Mhm.
poverty. What mattered was, hey, I had people that knew me, and I was known, and I was in the process of knowing them, and
Yeah.
that's the richness. So that's an element of lifestyle medicine as well, that sometimes we can put our head down, including me. I'm guilty of this for probably the first 15 years of my medical career, was not really seeing the forest for the
Mhm.
trees and just having my nose down and working really hard. Because here's the thing: if I value this active involvement, and I defined leadership as going and doing, well, you could easily get sideways with that. And you
Yeah.
could just get your head down and nose down and miss the bigger picture, which
Yeah.
is, yes, we have to be proactive and engaged, but we need people along the way. Kurt
Yeah.
Thompson is a physician who's a psychiatrist in um, the Washington, D.C. area, and he has really taken interpersonal neurobiology and applied it to the Christian faith in terms of
Yes.
spiritual
I listened to his
formation.
stuff. Yeah.
He's great, right?
So good.
So he talks about being able to do a lot of hard things for a really long time, as long as you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
And I think that really resonates with me as, like, how do we really do this lifestyle medicine? Well, I think we do it together. I think we do it step by step, and we need a good cadence to it. We need
Yeah.
pace and presence. And I think it helps to have some guidance, and having
Right.
physicians, more and more physicians, like I said, are getting engaged in this process, including myself. And I think that it's really a lot easier when you have a physician that's going to support you in that process.
Yes. Rather than only kind of taking the treatment approach.
Right.
So let's connect some dots here because, I want you to connect the dot for us between, we have a lot of listeners who are faith-led professionals on all different types of walks of life. Why should they be thinking about this idea of preventative medicine, lifestyle medicine?
Mhm.
Why should they lean into this? What is the connection between our faith
Yeah. Yeah.
and this different new approach to our health?
Right. So it's interesting when you think about, God does the work for us, and at least in the Christian faith, God does the work of salvation. But even if you look at the book of James and it talks about faith without works being dead, there is an element where we do need to trust God, and then we need to spiritually improve ourselves. But when it comes to lifestyle medicine, which would go into then the mind and the body as well, there's this element of, we are called to be good stewards of our body.
Yeah.
We are called to also be a part of the process of our own salvation. Work out your salvation, Paul
Yeah.
says, right? So I think it was Paul, maybe not. I don't know. But the bottom line is, working it out makes it so that we need to be engaged in the process. So the physician can be that support and that guide. Your family can also be that support and that guide, friends, community.
Yeah.
But there's an element that you just have to do yourself, and
Yeah.
you need to trust God that it's going to be all right to do these things, and that there will be fruit at the end. It's very much like our faith. Lots of things that we do to cultivate a relationship with God, or to feel more at one with God, or the Spirit, is it's by faith that we say, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read the Word of God, or I'm going to pray and be in this silent, contemplative, meditative moment. I'm going to take an entire hour of my day to do this, and do this repetitively. What you're doing is building up kind of spiritual muscles doing
Yeah.
that. And then the same idea is with going to the gym and
Yeah.
lifting weights every day and dedicating that hour, and you're building physical muscles. And when you go to
Yeah.
the coffee shop and spend an hour with your friends or people, getting to know them, going that step deeper, you're building those relational muscles, which ultimately cultivates your flourishing mind and allows you to flourish and be resilient in your thought life and in your response to things not going right. So I think it all kind of fits together. I think our faith informs how this all, and I see this in the scriptures all the time, and in faith, there's so many parallels between the human body. I mean, even Paul describes the body of Christ as different parts serving
Yeah.
different things. I mean, there's so much parallel and
Yeah.
analogy that goes into it. And so I think people should care because one, we want to lead with beauty and goodness because people will listen to what we say as leaders if we are leading with things that are beautiful and good. And when we're not leaning into a healthier body and a flourishing mind, we're going to have less to offer them that is beautiful or that is
Yeah.
good,
Yeah.
and then we'll become less relevant in their mind of like, who do I want to turn to when the going gets rough. I think of my wife as the epitome of somebody who leads with beauty and goodness, and I promise you, when something goes wrong, there's about 50 people that want to call her first,
Yeah.
right? That's leadership.
Yeah.
When someone's turning to you because they see you've got an answer that they might not have, that's a beautiful, beautiful example of
Yeah.
leadership. And so to me, this all fits part and parcel together.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. Well, let's shift a little bit and talk about this new venture that you're on. You've mentioned a couple times that you've just opened this new DexaFit in Cincinnati. I
Yes.
want to talk about what DexaFit is, but first I want to hear the story of like, how did God lead you in on this path to do something that's kind of sitting adjacent to, but outside the typical healthcare system?
Yeah.
There has to be a God story there. So tell us
Yeah.
the God story of how you got there.
Yeah. I do feel like one thing Kurt Thompson also talks about is paying attention to what you're paying attention to, right? And I was forced to pay attention in the late teens of this century to my mom getting sicker, and
Okay.
unfortunately, my mom developed Alzheimer's dementia, and she's living just down the street, walking distance from me in a memory care unit. And the story, unfortunately, is not over. There's a lot of just slow decline. And, our story informs us. That's my mom's side of the story. My father died from complications related to diabetes and just was
Ah,
unable to tolerate what was otherwise a simple total knee replacement.
mm,
His kidneys couldn't handle the anesthesia, and
mm,
he ultimately went in for a same day kind of procedure, overnight at most, and never left the hospital system. He
ah,
ended up
wow.
having 9 months of struggling, leading to
Ah,
hospice and finally passing. And this was when I was in medical school. So I'm sorry, residency. I was in residency
okay.
at that
Okay.
point. So throughout my life, I've been forced to really look at, okay, I've known that things aren't perfect. And I think the restoration concept has always come to surface for me because I've seen the brokenness in the world,
Yeah.
yet I've also seen beauty and goodness in the world. So as God was working through me, I was noticing more opportunity to learn from everything from podcasts to books to articles I was reading. This was before COVID even, about how do we live a better life. And that really
Mm,
got my attention because I saw how relevant it was for my own family, for my patients, and for the future of healthcare. Like, how are
yeah.
we going to save money in healthcare? Well, it's not going to be just putting people on more expensive drugs.
Right.
It's not going to be letting them do whatever and then wait for a problem and then think that somehow things are going to get better and cheaper. And no, we're going to have to change the way we view health and get more proactive as individuals. So I really was reading and looking, and I started realizing, okay, there's some really good tests. There's some metrics out there, body composition testing, looking at your weight from a different perspective, not looking at your weight as one lump sum, but what is made up of that number we call your weight on a
Yeah.
scale. Your fat mass is different than your muscle mass. It's different than your bone mass. And I knew that this test existed, and I soon learned it was not available in Cincinnati. And then I said, well, Dex scans are available. We do this for osteoporosis screening.
Yeah.
I think we can probably figure out a way to make this work. But the system really is built for doing what's always been done. And so
Yeah.
when I asked, I would like a body composition DEXA scan to be done, the result I would get is a regular DEXA scan saying if the person had an osteoporosis or not, and then they would throw a percent body fat on there. And
Mm.
that's really not where the richness is in a body composition scan. The body composition scan, yes, the percent body fat matters to a degree, but your visceral fat is what really matters. And if you're
Yeah.
developing more, that's like the iceberg well below the surface that allows you to see whether or not you have dangerous fat that might lead to pre-diabetes, which would lead to diabetes, or it might be laying down some plaque in your arteries and little by little. So visceral fat, muscle mass. I started reading so much about how our muscle mass declines in our 40s and beyond. But how do we know, especially if the weight is kind of stagnant or staying within 1 or 2 pounds on a scale? Well, the
Yeah.
DEXA scan addresses that, whereas the scale just tells you, oh, you're a couple pounds lighter or a couple pounds heavier. Well, I don't want to be 2 pounds lighter if I lost 2 pounds of muscle. And I
Right.
certainly am not happy if I lost some muscle and gained visceral fat and I'm the same weight, or, oh, I gained 2 pounds, but I'm actually now in a much more dangerous baseline condition because I
Yeah.
have more fat in the wrong places and less muscle to support my frame and to help my metabolism, which ultimately leads to a vicious cycle downward, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, there's that. And then I started reading about VO2 max and how adequate that is for helping understand how healthy your heart and lungs are. And yet, most of the time, we wait till someone's got some symptoms. We'll do a stress test on them. And it's important and valuable. It's very valuable. But we're oftentimes not testing people at the right times or the right ways. If you took a 40-year-old and showed them, hey, you're not up to par with your cardiopulmonary fitness and you can do something about it.
Yeah.
Now we're in a better space so that by the time they're 50, they could literally put 10 points onto their VO2 max and change their life entirely just by
Yeah.
simply learning some basic skills around walking at the right pace to zone 2 train, or
Yeah.
to run in intense times but in short bursts. And we could tell you exactly how your heart rate should be reading in those moments.
Yeah.
And then, of course, convincing people, all right, I know I don't want to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger and all muscular, but I better lift some weights.
Yep.
And it's funny because none of us are going to get big and bulky like that, even if we try our hardest. It's
Right.
kind of like me saying, well, I better not play any golf this week because if I do, I'm probably going to end up being on the tour. And I don't
Right.
think I got time to really leave my family behind and my practice.
Right.
So I just won't golf because it's just too much risk that I'm going to
Yeah.
be on the tour. I'm going to be too good. No, I'll be
Right.
lucky to be a handicap 16. I'll be
Yeah.
lucky. So that's the idea behind what I started realizing were all these tests exist and I can't give them to people. So I started doing a
Yeah.
lot of homework and research, and then COVID hit, right? And what
Yeah.
we started realizing was, oh my gosh, we are vulnerable as individuals if we've not been paying attention to our health. You start looking at the news, and they're saying, listen, if you're obese and you have diabetes and heart disease, you are more at risk. And that
Mm.
got so many patients' attention. And so all of a sudden, there was more of an interest in, well, how do I avoid getting really sick from COVID? Well, it parallels really nicely with lifestyle medicine, right? And so
Yeah.
that got me saying, well, let's formalize my understanding of lifestyle medicine. Let's go through the formal training and get the formal certifications. I'd realized that I'd done most of that work over the previous 10 years of learning a lot for my own good in the
Yeah.
beginning. But basically, I started to see that there was this pattern that every step along the way, God was taking me one step closer to saying, listen, you need to do this. I started offering more lifestyle coaching and mentoring to my patients. But again, it was like a square peg in a round hole. It was just not enough time. And I was taking more and more work home. And it really resonated with a lot of patients, but it became very challenging and exhausting. I
Yeah.
started thinking, okay, how can this work? Like, what's the
Yeah.
right environment and what's the right way to operationalize this so that
Yeah.
I can do what people really need and do it at a pace where I can continue to give them the type of presence that they expect from me at this point in our relationship as doctor patient and
Yeah.
what they deserve. And, there's no way without presence and pace you could ever deliver the type of lifestyle medicine that's needed. So I realized there was just so much of a gap between where I was in my daily practice and where I wanted to be that I started looking for, okay, how do I bring this testing to Cincinnati? And I found this company that's called DexaFit. Now, it's a licensing company. It's more or less a software and data aggregation company more than a franchise, although on the surface it looks franchisey. So I get that
Yeah.
question a lot. Hey, is this a franchise? And it's like, no, it's a licensing agreement where I'm agreeing to use their software and we're helping build a nice big data set that's de-identified, but we're building a data set that helps us understand more and more about how the human body is what makes a healthy body or an unhealthy body now using machine learning even. So now we're using
Yeah.
lifestyle traditional medicine, but now going to the AI side of things and saying, okay, if we have a data set of over 250,000 DEXA scans, what can we learn from that data set? And
Yeah.
what we've found is that you can start to do some predictive modeling around how healthy someone is from a cardiometabolic perspective. In other words, what's their risk for diabetes? What's their risk for heart disease? And by no means is it fully formed and established, nor would I use the AI piece to diagnose somebody.
Right.
That's not really where it is. But it's the first taste of how this data might really help us leverage and learn more about what's going on deeper inside of you. And
Yeah.
can we get a step, if not two steps ahead,
Yeah.
and help you prevent and be proactive in your care and really it's all personalized data, right? There's nothing one size fits all about DexaFit. Knowing your visceral fat, that's unique to you, your
Yeah.
muscle mass, whether you're appropriately muscled for your age and for aging well. Knowing your VO2 max, it's very personalized. And I will say a lot of wearables are trying really hard to keep up with this, and they're doing okay. I would say
Yeah.
they're doing okay. My
Right.
Apple Watch really gyps me though. I have 10 more points on my VO2 max in real life than I do on my watch. My watch predictively says it's a 33 and I'm actually a 43. And a 43 is actually good and a 33 is not so good. So,
Yeah.
it's
I
kind
think
of
I was
like,
closer to the 33 when I came in. So I got some
well,
work to do
no.
on that. But you
Eh,
taught me how to exercise differently so I can improve that.
yes.
Like I
And
do think there's so much value in it.
that's the
Yeah.
beauty is there's
Yeah.
it's not easy, but it's simple in a lot
Yeah.
of ways
Yeah.
of saying, okay, let's be more efficient and effective by using data about our actual body to
Yeah.
improve metrics that actually matter for aging. And
Yeah.
that's really the essence of what DexaFit was. So I saw not only did they have this information, but they had this wonderful app that they developed that really simplifies the whole thing.
Yeah.
Traditionally, getting a body scan for body composition, you'd be handed a stack of papers that were a printout and is really hard to interpret even for a doctor, and it requires like at least napkin math to get some of the data points you actually need, like your lean
Yeah.
mass index. It's not easy. Now that's another beautiful thing that we use software that DexaFit has developed that just curates all that raw data into a
Yeah.
beautiful, easy, patient engaging app that then longitudinally you can follow your information. So I was like, this is a win. These guys are doing great work. I want to come alongside. And so I started courting them to let me kind of open something in Cincinnati. And then that opened a whole new set of thoughts of the what ifs. Like, so
Yeah.
if we have this data, well, how could we build structure around the data? And so it's opened us up to we've opened in February. We're still growing. We've very softly started and we just can't operationalize a full blown thing because I'm still part-time working at TriHealth and part-time working at DexaFit. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to TriHealth for letting me do that. They're fantastic over there.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what I have saw was like, well, we can really give people testing in our ecosystem. We can give people consults so they have a deeper dive into this longevity space and this lifestyle space. We
Yeah.
can also, just really come alongside them in more of a longitudinal way and just help them finally get maybe some support and help to do it themselves, so to speak, but in
Yeah.
a safe way. The health and wellness space does offer a lot of things, but sometimes there's a lot of noise, and this finding the signal amongst the noise is challenging. So
For sure.
having a doctor who's been at it for 20 plus years and who has studied it himself, lived it himself, I know there's more people like me. I'm really looking to work with them more as we go farther along because I resonate with the doctors that really like lifestyle medicine. So yeah, that's kind of how we got here and where we
Yeah.
are. And it's just been a natural, like, okay, well, this is great. I'm having so much fun doing this. I'm getting a lot of great feedback. Why not keep doing this more and more? And we're growing at a pace where this is something that's uh, this summer we're kind of slowly moving towards a full on blowout. And I've actually resigned from TriHealth, and I'm
Wow.
going to be full time doing DexaFit and offering um, everything in our ecosystem to the community of Dayton, Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky. We're
Yeah.
seeing people from all the areas interested in coming, and I've had people come and say, "I'm so excited about this. I want my brother from Philadelphia to come." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Is there one closer?" And I'm like, "I think actually we might be." You're a little closer to New York City, but I really appreciate you coming. There
Yeah.
are a few other DEXA Fit locations. There's 60 around the world,
Yeah.
but I'm really one of the first ones that's really trying to fully integrate lifestyle medicine where it's available on site from the team here
Yeah.
and also offer all the testing. We're excited. However, people enter our ecosystem, whether it's just
Yeah.
for a test once or for more of a long-term relationship, we're excited
Yeah.
to have them. Yeah, and help them.
Well, what's great about what you've shared so far, Dr. Dave, is I think two things, like for the faith-led listener right now, there's two kind of interesting angles to this conversation. One is how might I be thinking about my health differently? And maybe, especially for the local folks, maybe I should call Dr. Dave up. We'll have all that information in the show notes. But then the other piece is it's so easy to hear and see your passion and excitement about this space. So much so that it's real easy to gloss over that you left the very safe traditional world of traditional medicine to do this. And your story is it's almost like there's just an assumption in there that I can see and hear in what you're saying that, well, God's been in this since the beginning,
Yeah.
like sparking this interest for you. And there's such I feel very encouraged
Hmm.
to hear someone, when you retell the story, it just sounds like, well, this was what I was supposed to do. So I did it.
Yeah.
But I think so many people have a sense somewhere that there's something I'm supposed to go do, or I feel a cause that I want to lean into. And that's probably been planted in them by the Lord, but they're too chicken to do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well done. Well done that
Thank you.
you've leaned into where the Lord led you. Before we wrap, tell us, where is God challenging you right now in this season of moving to full-time DexaFit? What
Yeah.
what what is he working on with you right now?
Yeah. So it's really lifestyle medicine to practice it is hard. I mean,
Hmm.
it takes a lot of work and it takes discipline and time. And you can take it in baby steps and grow and make and become better and better at it.
Yeah.
But I was pretty good at a lot of it, and then I started working 6+ days a week. And so it becomes really challenging to, again, I am the project, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
How do I make sure I'm living the things that I'm speaking of
Mm,
and finding the space and time? So it's been humbling to realize, hey, at the end of the day, as exhilarating as some of these days have been, I'm tired and like it's easier to turn to a bag of chips than it is to a bag of carrots or making a salad
yeah.
and I know how to do all the right things, but I'm still reminded how challenging it is. So God is challenging me to say, okay, you are still the project.
Yeah.
DexaFit will come along. I've got support on that. And as you do beautiful and good things in your own life and in the lives of people around you, I will do what I will do. And
Yeah.
in the meantime, he's calling me to be faithful in the little things, like
Yeah.
just going to bed and not staying up to write one more email
Yeah.
and making sure I get about 7 hours of sleep. And if I get 6.5 for 4 days in a row, give yourself 7.5 the next day. Just catch up a
Right.
little bit.
Catch up a
Although
little
there's
bit.
still controversy about whether you can catch up on sleep. And like choose to just, don't drink the second beer, just don't
Yeah.
do it. It's like these are real honest things that even a doctor or anybody that knows better is challenged by because, again, going back to interpersonal neurobiology, like Dr. Kurt Thompson, the things we sense and image and feel and think those are the things that lead to our behaviors, right?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
have to address the mind as we address lifestyle medicine. It's not just about helping you not stress as much, but understanding what mindfulness and mindful eating and mindful movement and mindful just choices are. And so I'm challenged in that. I just got to
Yeah.
keep fighting the good fight, as Paul would say. So
I love that. And really it's just a version of practicing what you're preaching,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
we're all challenged by that. It's so much easier to say, I'm going to walk with the Lord in this way, or I'm going to practice this spiritual discipline. It's always easier to say it than to
yeah,
do it.
yeah,
And, I find I grow so much when I mentor and coach others because I realize, oh, I just coach them to do something that I'm not doing a good
yeah,
job of myself. So I love that answer. Thank you for your honesty on that.
yeah.
This has
No, for
been
real.
such a great conversation. I'm so excited about DexaFit. I came in was one of the early scan. I did all the tests
Yes,
and
thank you for
really,
coming.
oh, it's really helped me to understand how to, especially on my how I'm exercising with my
Mhm.
heart rate and things like that. And I'm confident when I come back in 6 months or a year that we're going to see an improvement in that. And
Bring
I'm
it
going to
on.
be
I'm
in my
excited for
my
you.
metabolic age or whatever. What was the age piece called?
Biological age, like, are you aging
Biological age.
faster or slower than your
Yes.
chronological age? Yeah,
I,
your
I want my
biological age.
I want my age to go down. It was a little less than it actually than my number of years here, but I'd like it to be even lower. So I'll start come back in a year and get my rescan and see where I am. Thank
It
you. Thank
sounds
you so
great.
much, Dr. Dave, for
You're
joining us
welcome.
today. So excited about what you're doing. That was a powerful, faith-filled conversation. And boy, we got a lot of information, didn't we, about health and wellness and preventative care. But I want to share a couple takeaways that I hope you also carry with you. The first one is just this overall sense I had that, our health is part of our call as faith-led leaders. We are called to steward our whole selves, not just our time, not just our gifts or our money, but our physical bodies too. Things like preventative care and lifestyle medicine, they're not just wise choices, but they're actually an act of worship and restoration. I really want to encourage you to look in, especially if you're local, to look into DexaFit as the start of that for you. The second piece, I love Dave used this phrase a couple of times. He kept saying, I am the project. And it's a really interesting idea, right? That you are the project. Before you can lead others well, we have to care for what God entrusted to us, including our own habits, our pace, our presence, our health, our well-being, all of those things. We are always a project. We are always a work in process when it comes to the Lord. And then the third thing, Dave's story really illustrates that we ought to pay attention to the thing that's our holy discontent. Dave had this holy discontent for not being able to practice the type of medicine that he wanted to be able to practice and have the time to spend with patients that he wanted to spend. And when this passion keeps, whatever your passion is, when it keeps stirring in you, I want to encourage you to recognize it might be the Spirit inviting you in to step out of your comfort zone like Dr. Dave did. You don't have to have it all figured out. Just have to be faithful to take the next step. Well, hey, if you're curious about lifestyle medicine or you want to learn more about DexaFit, check out the show notes. I've got all the links and all the resources in there. If this episode resonated with you, please share it and maybe consider writing a review for us or reach out directly. We'd love to chat with you. We would love to hear what stirred in you today. So until next time, keep leading with faith and growing with purpose, and we'll talk to you next time on The Faith Driven Leader.